Yes, it is Wednesday. It is noon Eastern Time, and that only means one thing. Well, maybe more than one thing, but definitely one thing. It is time for the High Noon Hemp Show. Of course, we are on the Hemptations Beach Facebook page, live video and video on demand. Same thing with the Jedi Hemp YouTube channel, and on Twitter at Hemptations. Of course, the podcast, the audio podcast, if you don't want to visualize or be able to see all of this, you just want to visualize it in your head, that's fine as well. Maybe you're on the road. Podbean, you can find us. You search the High Noon Hemp Show, also Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. I am Joe Claire. He is Beach, high above the Hemptations in Sharonville for the season finale of season 7.
Da-na-na,
How are things in the
da-na-na.
world of Hemptations, Beach?
Feeling nostalgic, I would say, this week for Hemp History Week. Um, just here we are, high above the hemp quarters. I should say high above the store because we're in the hemp quarters, I would consider it. For the High Noon Hemp Show. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining in. We're going to have one heck of a show today as I go back 28 million years when it comes to hemp history. It's what I like to call it's a long time. It really is. I'm not even sure that Hemp History Week is actually existing this week. So, we may be a small crowd of
Yeah, I looked at
people.
their Facebook page and I didn't really notice
There's
anything
no
special.
there's
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah, they only talk about 2019. And so I guess they just called it off this year.
That's a shame.
I don't know if it was a shame.
They were here.
But we're here. We are celebrating. We're discounting the stores all week for Hemp History Week, and so we will continue with it as much as we can and support it, of course. So this is what I call a beach history of hemp. Again, I've been researching industrial hemp for almost 30 years now. In fact, it probably 30 years. 1990 was about when I started. I was at Heidelberg College. I was a communications major, so I was having to write a lot of speeches, and I get turned on to industrial hemp for whatever reason. I do remember buying my first copy of The Emperor Wears No Clothes at a normal festival in Ohio. And so, that's where my hemp history started. I grew up in Kentucky, where we knew the stories of ditchweed, which was just leftover hemp from the war. That's how they described it to us. You can't get high off of it. It looks just like marijuana, smells just like marijuana, but you can't get high off of it. It was hemp left over from the war, is how it was described to us. And so, I think that was obviously the first time I had heard of hemp, because everybody knows about ditchweed if you grow up in Kentucky, and I know ditchweed is actually a reference in multiple states, where there is what people were like, man, I can't believe that, it looks just like it. It smells just like it. But again, it did not give you any euphoric value. We could have only hoped it was high in CBD, and they would have left us alone, and we could have been using it for that back in the day. And so, back to my final speech to graduate in college was on industrial hemp, not medicinal, not personal use, but actually industrial hemp. I remember the pictures of I can't believe it. It's the USS. I'm flaking on the name of the ship that the United States Naval. It was a naval vessel, and it was literally, they rigged it with half American hemp and half Russian hemp at the time to test the value, basically. Russian hemp, and I'll get to that in the history part, played a huge part in the founding of the United States, or the founding of the making of the United States. And so I'll get to that in a little while. So anyway, here is the beach history of hemp, as I say. But again, started in the Tibetan plain around 28 million years ago. So they've traced the plant back to the Tibetan plateau 28 million years ago. Jump ahead to about 10,000 years ago, and they've found fiber in the Turkish Chinese area, which is, again, Fertile Crescent. Agriculture was born, modern agriculture or agricultural period was born in the Fertile Crescent. That is where we stopped migrating, laid down, and started planting plants every season, and that's how it began when it came to agriculture, more or less. 6,000 years ago, we find it as one of the 5 grains in the Chinese diet. Now, this pic here, and I'm going to use their description of this pic. Here we have a lovely daytime frock in hand geometric details on the Eurasian steppe 5,000 years ago. This design is comfortable and practical to wear at work while milking the horses, sweeping out the pit house, or collecting dung for fuel. And then this next picture again. These were remakes, basically, of hemp dresses that they believe existed over 5,000 years ago, when hemp fiber was once again, and it was already 5,000 years old. And so this is what it evolved to as far as clothing. This was probably some of the first hemp clothing that ever existed. 4,000 years ago in India, it's considered a sacred grass. So once again, a huge part of everyday life in India. 2,100 years ago, and this is me that we don't say this fact enough. The Chinese invent paper. Okay, paper was invented using hemp. I don't know if we'd have paper without hemp or not, but it was invented using hemp. So let's think about that when we think about where we went to with paper, because eventually we get down to cutting trees for paper. It's like again, how did we reverse that technology so much that we just started destroying timberland for paper use? It's just that fact alone is so astonishing to me, because hemp is a renewable resource. So we can grow new hemp every year for paper instead of cutting down trees to make paper out of. And so let's get back to that. I know I'd like to go full circle on that one. Jump ahead a little bit in hemp. Again, it played a huge part in the European immigration of America. And at one point, it was legal trade. Thomas Jefferson illegally smuggled Russian hemp seed out of England to the United States because it was vital to the military, to the everyday way of life in America. Okay? So Thomas Jefferson, by just recent, the laws have been changed just recently, but until just recently, Thomas Jefferson was a drug smuggler by the laws that made it illegal. And I'll get to that in just a minute. 500,000 pounds of hemp seed, Russian hemp seed, illegally smuggled out of England into the United States. And so that speaks, I don't know, volumes to me, and all in all. We found a 600-year-old bridge in France that has hempcrete buttresses, still in mighty fine shape. People still cross the bridge, I believe. It's still in use, but they actually used the hempcrete, basically, kind of material in the buttresses of this bridge in France. And for a little bit of history, as far as France is the only country that never made industrial hemp illegal, although they're having a CBD issue right now, which I find funny. And so, 1729, you've got Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, was Hempfield Township. And there are a lot of, including in New York City, right by New York City, there is a Hempstead, a little city called Hempstead. And there are a lot of hemp fields and hempsteads here and there across the country. And you know, there's no other way. There's no other way to understand that than that was a huge hemp farming place. And so, once again, that's how big it was in this country. At one point or another, there were cities named after the fact that they grew it there. Excuse me. Hemp was being grown in southern Ohio, northern Ohio. They were growing corn and the plants that the Native Americans were growing, but there weren't actually a whole lot of Native Americans on the southern part of Ohio. There were Native Americans here, don't get me wrong, because we did kick them off their land to make the city of Cincinnati. And so I don't want to, I'm not trying to not recognize that in any way. But that's where in Ohio we were growing hemp early. For the most part, we actually in Ohio, I had a hemp paper processing plant in Lima, which was a huge paper processing city for a while. Multiple paper places that were processing paper. One of them was doing hemp, if not all of them. Back in that day, were using hemp. Probably if they existed before 1900, they were probably processing hemp paper. Because that's basically when the tree got involved, and yellow journalism comes from the fact that tree paper was inferior to hemp paper because it changed colors and it became brittle. So the original tree paper was bad. Instead of going back to hemp, what do though? They just keep cutting down trees and trying to make it so it's comparable to hemp paper. And so, once again, we go forward to go backwards in the world, using less hemp and making things much worse on everything, the environment and everything. And then we also had a fiber processing plant right across the river in Covington, Kentucky. Kentucky, if you don't know, was the largest producer of industrial hemp, farming wise, until 1937. 1937, what happens? The Marijuana Tax Act. And I want you to know that marijuana is spelled with an H in the Marijuana Tax Act. So originally, marijuana spelled with an H in the Marijuana Tax Act. Farmers and doctors were arrested because they didn't even know that marijuana was hemp and or cannabis. That's what the government did. They called it marijuana as a propaganda tool to make it illegal because no one really knew what marijuana was other than it was a reference to the drug, to using the drug. And of course, they used very racist propaganda to convince the American people that marijuana as a drug should be bad. And in the process, they made all cannabis illegal, which is where we get industrial hemp from. That's our illustrious government doing its finest propaganda work in a long time. I used to call it, one of the most easily proven conspiracies out there. But the more that I look at it, it was just another genius use of our government using propaganda to do what they want to do. And so, ironically, in 1938, it was, this is hilarious. 1937 Marijuana Tax Act makes growing industrial hemp illegal. 1938, Popular Mechanics says it was America's new $1 billion crop. It went from being made illegal to being called America's new billion-dollar crop. Well, guess what didn't happen? That new billion-dollar crop. Nope. Never happened. Because even in 1938, Popular Mechanics was still thinking hemp was legal to grow because it didn't understand the Marijuana Tax Act. Science didn't understand the Marijuana Tax Act. 1942, what does our illustrious government do? They release a video called Hemp for Victory. What does this video say? It implores the American farmer to grow hemp for World War II. Okay, so 5 years after they made it illegal, they begged the farmers to grow it for the war effort. Go check out Hemp for Victory. It's on Hemp YouTube. It's 15 minutes long. It's your standard American PSA.
Yeah.
And it implores people, farmers, to grow industrial hemp for the war effort. What happens? The war ends. They basically go back to the old standards of the Marijuana Tax Act, and most hemp is not grown in the United States anymore, up until 1957, where that's the last crop in Wisconsin was grown. And so I don't know how they finagled that. Interesting enough, I haven't really got the history as how that farmer or those farmers in Wisconsin were still growing until 1957. If I was to guess, it's probably because they had a government contract to supply the Navy with cordage. I mean, that's what I would guess, which would, again, be completely unfair to all the other hemp farmers that couldn't grow it. But once again, that is our government for you. 1969, the Marijuana Tax Act was repealed, replaced with the Controlled Substance List. That is where marijuana becomes spelled with a J instead of an H. So they changed the spelling of the word that they made up. Just more proof that they basically made this word up to make cannabis illegal. And then because they made the word up, they decided they could change the spelling of it. And so they did. And so that's why marijuana is now spelled with a J. But you can spell it with an H, and in my opinion, both spellings would be proper. The H came first. And maybe the H stood for hemp, and that's why they wanted to take it out and replace it with the J. I don't know. The J just stands for jerks, if you ask me. So that pretty much brings us up to our turn of the century. I just love saying that. And at the turn of the century, Canada legalizes industrial hemp and goes basically full-blown with the food, leaving the United States as the only industrialized country in the world that's not growing hemp. The only industrialized country in the world in the year 2000-ish not growing hemp was the United States. BMW, Mercedes, Lotus, all using hemp composites in their vehicles. The first hemp house built in Asheville, North Carolina. 2004 was the real turning point here, because 2004 is when the Hemp Industries Association sued the DEA. The DEA came along and they said, you can't put hemp foods on the shelf for people to eat. One of the most nutritional foods out there as far as protein goes, as far as plant-based. You can't put that on the shelves unless you put 0% THC, unless you can guarantee 0% THC. Well, we took the DEA to court. We won in the federal court, which created the source law, which said if the source was from hemp, it's a hemp product. If the source was from marijuana, so to speak, then it was a marijuana product. That differentiated the two. And that really opened up the floodgates for all the hemp industries, in my opinion. The big box stores and the grocery stores. It wasn't just Whole Foods that was carrying hemp foods. Now all of a sudden, all of the grocery stores started picking up hemp foods because they were no longer worried about the government coming in and saying that this was illegal in some way or another. Now we jump forward, or actually I want to say West Virginia, around that time in 2004, West Virginia legalized industrial hemp. They were the first state in the United States to relegalize industrial hemp. But they didn't issue one license to any farmer because they couldn't get around the DEA and the fact that it was still, in fact, on the federal controlled substance list. And so that's what prohibited them from actually allowing any farmers to grow it, even though it was legal in the state. And so then we jump forward to 2014, the Agricultural Act of 2014, specifically Section 7606, which defined industrial hemp, which was the most important step to bringing it back to the farmers, was defining what is actually industrial hemp. The federal government's definition of industrial hemp basically is 0.3% or less THC. That's it. Taking the THC out of it was basically what defined it as industrial hemp. We could start farming, which we did, and then the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018 then takes it off the controlled substance list. Up to that point, the farmer had to submit to the state, and then the state submitted the paperwork to the DEA. The DEA took those seeds off the controlled substance list, specifically, each one that the farmers were going to grow, to allow the farmers to grow it. And from there on out, it was a hemp product. Okay? 2018 comes along. The big move there is no longer on the controlled substance list. We don't have to go through the DEA. Okay? It just has to be a recognized hemp seed. And again, it's basically a grow at your own risk, because if you, as they say, pop hot, 0.4% THC, no longer hemp. It's not necessarily a crime in most states, but they destroy that 0.4% THC industrial hemp, where the 0.3% or lower. And so, that's some things that we're seeing now. We're also seeing certified seed come out of that, where they're guaranteeing you that it's not going to be this, and it is going to be this and that and all that. And so, moving forward, we've gone from 100 acres in the first year to almost 100,000 acres last year, I believe. And so, and again, a lot of that was CBD, but we're moving forward more with the grain for food product and the fiber and whatnot. The future history of hemp is it's treated like corn, and that's it. You grow it for whatever reason you want to. You don't worry about undue licenses, regulations, and all that. That is the future of industrial hemp. I'm going to take a drink out of one of my favorite hemp products. Definitely, when you talk about the history of beech and hemp, this is going to be like in the museum, I suppose, my coffee cup, because I've literally had it with me almost every day since I bought it, and I venture to say I've had it for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. It's interesting to think how different that history you just went through would have been if the government just wouldn't have got involved at all, and people just been growing.
We wouldn't even be talking about it. I wouldn't even be sitting here. I would not even be sitting here with this show. We'd all be using hemp products. We wouldn't talk about it any more than we would cotton or wool or anything else.
We're doing a show about corn.
Yeah, maybe
The corn
they
show.
would have made corn illegal. It's hard to say. Um, and speaking of that, I'm almost surprised that they haven't tried to make corn illegal at some point or another, because you can make fuel out of corn, and that's another reason why alcohol was prohibited, and that's another reason why hemp, because you can run a vehicle on hemp oil. I skipped over one of the more exciting things in the early 40s. Henry Ford built a car out of hemp, so it was hemp composite, and it was really a biocomposite. So it was plant-based composite. There's a famous picture of him taking a sledgehammer to the fender of this biocomposite, which had hemp in it as well, and it also used hemp fuel. Why was this car never built? Because he couldn't grow the hemp in the United States. All the hemp that was being grown at the time was going to the war. When the war ended, he couldn't grow the hemp here, and so therefore the hemp composite car, composite car that Henry Ford built and proved was a viable vehicle, was never built because of the Marijuana Tax Act. Again, that's a biodegradable car you can take a sledgehammer to. Come on, folks. I mean, I wonder how many days you can park it in the rain before it disappears. And we're seeing that. There was supposed to be a vehicle called the Kestrel, probably 10 years ago, coming out of Canada, that was going to be the entire body was going to be a hemp composite. That never came true. But BMW dropped the body weight of their electric vehicles by 20% by replacing all the door panels with hemp composite.
Wow.
You walk up to an E version of a BMW and open the door, and that's a hemp door. That's a hemp composite door, right there to look at. And I've seen one, and it was natural, and you can tell it's hemp composite. There's that just the way it looks. And so, someday the history will be surrounded by it. A little bit of Hemptations history. We started in 1995. My goal was to prove to the consumer that hemp should be legal for our farmers to grow. So that's one goal we've accomplished. I suppose over the years, and we've built the inventory up to the largest selection of hemp on the planet, and just recently making some great history for Hemptations, voted in the city of Cincinnati as the best green sustainable store around. 1.7 million people voted in City Beats best of. 1.7 million people voted in City Beats best of, and we won best green sustainable store because of all the hemp that we carry. Because every hemp product that we carry is green. Every hemp product that we carry is green, and definitely sustainable. Hemp is a renewable crop. That makes it sustainable. It's basically carbon neutral. Some argue that it's actually carbon positive, but it's at least carbon neutral because all the carbon that is used to produce it is replaced because it's biodegradable, because everything can be returned to its natural state very quickly when it comes to any hemp product. And so obviously, it doesn't require herbicides or pesticides when grown for everything but CBD. And so, it really, we can help get the planet back to the way it was in its better history of clean water and clean soil and clean everything if we grew more hemp. So that's still our goal at Hemptations. Still making history. We're going to celebrate being open for a quarter of a century this year.
Indeed.
And to me, I'm just blown away by that. Half my life.
Time flies.
Half my life, 25 years, half my life, I have Hemptations. Hemptations. Like that. I have had Hemptations, that is for sure. So there you go. There you go. That's just the beach history of hemp. Um, there is so much more in between. You have, trust me, if I really wanted to, I could probably talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of the things that hemp has done in the history. And so that's just a little bit. Go out there, continue to get the knowledge, support the plant, and do what we can to keep making hemp history, for that matter. Now, on to the product spotlight. The stuff that the hemp makes that's made it so important in our world. Now, the first one is actually a Planet Everywhere product. So we make these here at the Planet Everywhere wood shop. Actually, it's just a good old-fashioned hemp clipboard. You need a clipboard? You want a hemp one? There it is. That's basically the hemp press board material is what that is there. Next one, my favorite clothing item ever in the history of all hemp products, I'd probably say Kentucky Hemp Outfitter jeans. We have them in various sizes and various styles still. And again, I can't even tell you how many pairs of these that I actually have. From ones that look brand new to ones I've had so long, I've actually torn holes in them. And I'd say that, my 20-year-old hemp outfitters are the only ones that I've worn so much. But I think that actually just being able to wear out a pair of hemp jeans shows my dedication to hemp, because I dare anyone to honestly try to wear out a pair in a short amount of time, because it took me 20 years probably to start wearing them out. And so now I have them all in stages of worn out. This one's still 15 years worn out, but I still look like a great pair of jeans to me. The next one is the Med CBD gum. This has been pretty popular online right now through the COVID-19, I think. It's a pretty good way to get 10 milligrams of CBD if you want it. Just chew the piece of gum for about 5 minutes or so, and you'll get it all in you. And so that's definitely been popular in the last month or so, with people needing it for this COVID-19. It doesn't fight COVID-19. It just makes the world better in the mind, calmer through this. Now, I will say that there are studies being done out there that may prove that cannabis can help or aid in the fight of COVID-19. And so, I hope to see that is proven soon enough. Once again, for another reason as to say is why this is a beneficial substance to us. Now that's, that may be that marijuana I was talking about. And I hate that word, to be honest with you. I avoid using that word as much as I can. Anyone that's ever heard me speak will tell you that the only time I use it is in reference to them using it, because it's cannabis. It's all cannabis. It's just different forms of cannabis. In the same sense that I believe we're all brown, we're just different shades. And I'm not going to get political with what's going on in the world right now. But I will have to say that this is just another wake up to people that don't believe in equality, period. Because we do, and I support it wholeheartedly. The next one is a company, again, we've been carrying these guys for so long. They were like one of the first cosmetic products that we picked up, were the Mary Hamsters lip balm. And we still, this is, I think our selection may be a little bit better right now. I took this picture a while back. But this is just, they have the lip balm in many different flavors, offering an organic or a vegan. We may just do the vegan right now. I'm not sure, or both. And then they also do the body balms. But these guys were one of the earliest adapters of a daily hemp cosmetic or body product. And we will carry them until our history is over, or their history is over. And I don't see that happening anywhere. I remember the day that I was in Whole Foods, and we had been carrying them for a while. And there's multiple products that I've walked into Whole Foods and seen that we were carrying. I was like, oh, that's cool. But I remember the day when I was in Whole Foods and saw the Merry Hamsters lip balm. I think they had it at the counter. And of course, there's a Whole Foods that is maybe not even a mile from the original Hemptations. You know, and then the next thing I noticed is they were carrying Hemp Mania bags, and we sold out. So we are still selling a lot of Hemp Mania bags, but they picked up the Hemp Mania line that we had been selling for a long time, and it kind of watched Whole Foods down the street from me start picking up the products we were carrying, and you know that's I don't brag much, but that's humbling. I mean, honestly, it sure proved to me, whether anybody was listening or not, that I was on the right path. And obviously some people were paying attention, in all honesty. So I love it. I love that. The next one is my very first hemp purchase. Now, I have shown this on the store before because I'm getting, you know, we're 84 episodes in. And so finding different products in my own inventory it's getting harder, you know. But this is the hemp bag. This was my very first hemp purchase. Again, I'm going to guess that it was around it was late 80s or very early in the 90s. But I think the thing that's most incredible about this hemp bag is no, I didn't buy it at a normal festival. No, I didn't get it at a Grateful Dead festival. No, I didn't buy it at the local green sustainable store because they didn't even exist. Or they were hard pressed to find. I shouldn't say that. They were hard pressed to find in the late 80s, 90s. The movement hadn't really even, you know, kind of gotten there. I don't think, and it wasn't in a hippie shop or a music shop or anything like that. I found this hemp bag on the back shelf at the leather store at Kings Island.
Wow.
So they had a leather store at Kings Island. Famous, if you don't know, Kings Island's one of the greatest amusement parks in the whole country. Known for the roller coasters, mostly. You know, Kings Island has been in competition with amusement parks around the world for the quality of their roller coasters for you know, my entire lifetime. That's for sure. But I remember there was a leather store. That's what it was called, the leather store. That's the big sign on the front of it, the leather store. And I don't know what called me in there at the time. I mean, I suppose actually, you know, late 80s, I might have still been okay with leather. I had a leather jacket or two until I finally, you know, got wise there, I suppose. But I was almost drawn to the back wall. And I will have to say that I believe I have some type of shopping OCD that does make me walk down like every aisle, because I do that. I feel like I almost have to, like any store I go into, my urge to walk down every aisle almost overtakes me. So anyway, I knew I was going to get to it eventually, I suppose, but it was almost drawn to this back wall, and there they were, just these two little racks, honestly, of these hemp bags. That was it, in the back of the leather store, these two little hemp bags. And I saw hemp on it, and I said, I got to buy this, and I bought it, and I carried it with me. You know, for a while, you know, put my wallet and whatever in there if I really wanted to. And so that was Beach's very first hemp purchase, the leather store at Kings Island, Cincinnati, Ohio. Again, late 80s, early 90s, for sure. And now,
100 years from now, when we're talking about Hemp History Week, some hologram show on whatever replaces Facebook or whatever, a prominent place will be created for this segment. Maybe not the other segments, I don't know, but this segment for sure, because you won't be able to have Hemp History Week in the future without knowing about the world famous beachwear segment, we ask the most important question of the day of Beach himself. What are you wearing, Beach?
That's right. That's right. If you're looking for like, they could make an animated version of me in 84 different outfits
There you go.
in the future, and I
Get
see
on
the
that.
technology you're talking about, and they'll say, "What was Beach wearing? What was Beach wearing?"
Let's flip through the
Um,
holograms.
Now you'll know. I did promise a Hemp History Week T-shirt, and so
Mm-hmm.
that we'll get. I do have my grassroots, what they call the Head Eye Council collection hat on. Um, but my short is actually a Vital Hemp Deep Roots Hemp History Week shirt. A little history of Vital Hemp. They were actually started by a couple that I believe the wife was from the Cincinnati area, and for a brief amount of time they called themselves Vital Hemptations. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when I finally asked them to stop, they understood. They understood. I mean, it was a great name. There are people out there using it now, and I think Vital Hemp is a great name for a company, to be honest with you. And so,
Okay.
but there's a little history for you for a little while. For a brief amount of time, Vital Hemp was in fact Vital Hemptations, and he does use Hemptations as a verb or an adjective. I forget how I did that. Whatever it is, on occasion on stuff, and I've seen other companies do that as well, and so that's fun. A Hempy's belt. You can see my Green Springs Technology pen in my Prana shorts, my Oasis no shows, which I love. My head case classic briefs, and then a pair of Adidas shoes. So when they want to make a maroon, when they need to make me in a maroon outfit, there will be
There you go.
supporting, obviously, the deep roots. If you don't know, cannabis it is literally a deep root plant. It's called a taproot. If a plant has what's called a taproot, it means they have one big root that goes down super deep into the ground. There are other, there's roots at the surface, there's short roots, but basically a taproot plant takes that root deep into the ground to bring out the nutrients. And that's why it's drought resistant most of the time, because once that root is established into the ground, they can pull enough moisture out of the ground after long-term drought. Uh, and so and that's another reason why it is also what they call a phytoremediator, which means it is very good at pulling bad stuff out of the ground. You go plant it somewhere where there's a lot of chemicals and or something that was left over, the hemp will literally pull that out of the soil and absorb it into itself, so to speak, and remove it from the ground. So it literally cleans the soil. I was talking about this before. If we want clean soil, why don't we use a plant that can make anything that literally cleans the soil?
Yeah.
It's a proven fact. And so, let's start doing that. And so that's, it is literally a deep roots. Let's see. Let's get to a little bit of news. There's really not a whole lot out there. As always, the Hemp History Week show goes longer than any other show. And so we'll get to a little bit of news here. This is kind of interesting. There are 2 separate lawsuits against PetSmart in Florida, accusing them of false and deceptive practices for selling CBD, not approved by the FDA. And so this is going to be, this is going to be kind of interesting to follow, in all honesty. If these lawsuits are successful, here we go backwards again with CBD.
Yeah.
It's pulled off the shelves of everywhere. Not just PetSmart, folks. I can tell you this, man. If they find this to be true, and I don't know how much the FDA regulates pet foods, but obviously they have something. They would have something to do with pet food, or they wouldn't be able to use the fact that it's not approved by the FDA in the lawsuit. And so, I don't think PetSmart, and we'll see how this. I don't think PetSmart's making any false claims about CBD. They just put out a little display of CBD products.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, in all honesty, they're going to prove that the customer bought these, um, you know, without, and we'll see. And again, if their employees were saying things they shouldn't about these products, then they may get in trouble. But if they're just trying to say that it was on the counter and you picked one out and you said, okay, I'm going to try this, that's your decision. They didn't, and so we'll see. It's going to be a very, very interesting lawsuit. And yeah. And so we will follow that one quite closely. And here's the deal again. I don't know what they're trying to gain here, but I can tell you what they're going to do. They're going to hurt every pet owner out there that knows that CBD helps them.
Yeah.
We sell a lot of pet CBD products here, from treats to tincture, and whatnot. I had a customer just recently, because of online sales. We didn't have it online, and they didn't think we were open, and they were like, well, we found it they were going to go down to Kentucky because they found it down in the same tincture that we sell down in Kentucky, because that's how vital it was to their pet.
Yeah.
And so, once again, we're going to, this could possibly set the entire pet part of CBD backwards. Once this decision is made. And so, we'll see how that all plays out. It's going to be interesting. Let's see. Tomorrow there is a webinar, the Cannabis World Congress webinar, from 2:30 to 3:30, sponsored by the National Hemp Association. So I think go to the National Hemp Association to register for the webinar. And I will tell you this: there's three speakers. One of them is John Vorjak, who is he knows what he's doing, and so his voice is one to be listened to when it comes to industrial hemp. I believe at this point he and I are brethren in hemp education, and we have never personally met face to face, but I do consider him someone that I look up to, honestly, in the world of education and hemp, and moving the plant forward in the best ways, doing it in a very unselfish way. A very unselfish way. He gives all his information out for free, just like me. He's willing to come and educate. If you ask him, I guarantee you, if you ask him to come and speak somewhere, he's going to do that. Just like me. If you ask me to come speak about hemp and I can get there, I'm going to do it. There aren't a whole lot of us out there that are truly in this for no reason whatsoever to benefit ourselves. You might say that's not true for me because I benefit from selling hemp. But I'm not doing it for the glory. I can tell you that. I'm not doing it for the personal awards, because I've never been recognized nationally for my efforts. I'm doing it because I truly want this plant to be as free can be, so we can use it for all of its purposes. That's the truth of it. And so tomorrow, Cannabis World Congress webinar. Go to National Hemp Association's website, I believe, and there's probably more information there. Let's see. The Experience Hemp Summer Solstice virtual conference and trade show is going on June 16th through the 19th. And again, that's at nocohempexpo.com. They're obviously the organizers of NOCO, which is the biggest industrial hemp event in the year, every year. They didn't obviously do one this year because of the COVID-19 issue. They were talking about doing one in the fall, which they're not real sure if they're even going to do because of the COVID-19 issue. I mean, again, 2020 is going to be the year everything was canceled virtually or not virtually. See, if I'm virtual now, Am I unvirtual when I'm out in public? I don't know. I'm kind of confused as to how that works. I feel like I'm virtual when I'm out in public too, but
Yeah.
anyway, such a weird world we live in right now. When we're allowed to stand by people again, it'll probably be 2021.
Could be.
But actually, I just lied, because June 26th to the 28th, they're actually going to do the Southern Atlantic and Arts Expo, and it is a hemp industry trade show and consumer marketplace. And that is in Asheville at the Asheville WNC Ag Center. And so actually we are going to see, I think, and I think they're going to be smaller. They're going to encourage smaller, obviously social distancing and whatnot, crowds. But I think one of the reasons they're doing, which is interesting actually, because hashtag 45 is talking about pulling a big thing out of North Carolina because of their restrictions, but they're still going to have the Southern Atlantic and Arts Expo. And so I don't know what that means. I guess they're going to have to, minimize how many people actually go through at a time or can be around, because I think there's still a restriction, I thought, on how many people are in one room. And again, for the most part, I support that. If you are going to go out and do things and be around people, wear a mask, wash your hands, do the responsible thing. Just like not wanting to spread the flu, we shouldn't want to spread this. Just like anything else. If we can, if it kills people and we can slow it down or make it less, then let's try to do that. I'm just saying.
Just don't breathe on people, period. We should never be breathing on each other out in public. That's weird.
We shouldn't. We really shouldn't be that close. And I've always kind of had a social distancing rule, I suppose. But I am also found that I'm pretty much an introvert, and I definitely don't like people being real close to me. Never have. Never liked crowds. Never been okay with it. I was almost panicked one time when we were down in New Orleans before Mardi Gras even started, and we got caught on one of the side streets. We literally couldn't move. I mean, I couldn't move. And I was like, we got to get the heck out of here. And as soon as we can move, you're taking baby steps, And as soon as I could move, full length fucking steps, excuse my language, I was out of there. And so I've always been a social distancer, I suppose. We'll encourage that now. So, all right, folks, thanks for tuning in to this week's show, season finale. Oh. Can't leave without saying, last minute, we're back. We're going to be back next year.
Awesome.
Season 8 is going to happen. They're telling me in the studios here up in management that if we get to 100, then we can go syndicate it. And so they're not going to give up on us now. And so hopefully we can get that syndication after 100. That's right. It's going to take us to season 9 though, to get that 100 episodes, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Season 8's been approved. We will be back next week, for the 85th episode of the High Noon Hemp Show. Remember, folks, you can go to Hemptations.com, check out stuff there. The second page has the events, and I'm starting to add websites of hemp companies with hemp products and all kinds of stuff there as a resource. The first page kind of talks about our events and us a little bit, and then you can go to Planet Everywhere and shop if you want to. But we sure appreciate you watching the show now. If you're watching later, we sure appreciate that. If you're listening on the podcast, we appreciate that. Our sponsors, us, truly appreciate that. No doubt about it. Once again, folks, if you don't know, I do this for fun.
Till the big Spotify money rolls in.
Until the big Spotify money rolls in. Until I'm getting paid on YouTube for 1 million views. I do this for fun. People ask me, what do you do for fun, Beach? I host a radio show called the High Noon Hemp Show. Anyway, reduce, reuse, recycle, make everything else out of hemp. Having Hemptations.
See you all next week for season 8.